Corporate woke wars have found their latest battleground in a freezer. Semafor reporting that Unilever cutting off funding to Ben & Jerry's Foundation. This after a clash over transparency and ideological control. Joining us right now to get into it all, Liz Hoffman, Semafor's business and finance editor. This is a fascinating story. Tell us what's really going on here.
So, Unilever bought Ben & Jerry's 25 years ago. And first they really liked their kind of quirky progressive politics. And then for a number of years, they kind of quietly tolerated it. And they've really lost patience with it. This is a company that has a real social mission, is not quiet about it, and is spending Unilever's money to enact it. Unilever gives millions of dollars a year to the Ben & Jerry's Charitable Foundation, which they send to exactly the kind of causes that you'd think, many of which have a very pro-Palestinian bent these days. And it's become a real headache for Unilever. And they are in the middle of spinning off this and their other ice cream businesses, which creates a corporate opportunity to figure out what's going on here. They're trying to audit the foundation. They're not getting a lot of cooperation. And they said, we're done funding this stuff. So that's where we are. There's a lawsuit simmering in the background where the foundation essentially says that they have been muzzled over the last year or two for speaking out on pro-Palestinian issues. And you end up with this really, really niche fight at this giant consumer goods company.
Right. Is there any impact on sales as a result of what's happening here? Either people who are walking away from eating Ben & Jerry's ice cream or people rushing to Ben & Jerry's ice cream, given the stances that this company appears to have taken?
That's what's interesting to me. We haven't really seen it. I mean, there was a real sales impact about 4 or 5 years ago when Ben & Jerry's said, we want you to stop selling our ice cream in the occupied territories in the West Bank. And Unilever said, OK, we're selling the license. Like, we do not want to have this fight. So you saw it then. You actually haven't seen it now. This is a pretty niche fight between some pretty ideologically motivated trustees of the foundation and a bunch of British and Dutch executives who say, we did not sign up for this. We're just trying to sell ice cream. And by the way, we're trying to sell shares of this ice cream company to the public over the next couple of months. So it's become kind of a fight that's happening away from consumers, which is interesting to me.
Go 30,000 feet, though, up just on the whole DEI issue. What really is the status in this moment, you think, of companies rolling back these policies? You know, there were a lot of announcements. Do you think that those were real? Was that just language? What's been the biggest impact, if you will?
I think it's mostly language. Certainly some real impacts on some of the stricter sort of HR policies that were adopted post 2020. You're seeing those quotas, which frankly were always kind of illegal, go away. The softer targets are still there. On the environmental stuff, it's kind of being rolled forward on a 5-year clock. I think companies are very afraid of being sued, frankly, for walking back things they said publicly, for almost as afraid as they are of kind of ending up in the public sphere for some of them. So I think most companies are trying to keep their head down. Unilever, unfortunately, cannot because it has this very, very loud subsidiary.
Meantime, I think when you come on, we almost can't get away from at some point mentioning Elon Musk. The Musk-Trump fight is back on. It had been off. We thought there was a ceasefire between them. I don't think you use the phrase ceasefire. That's wrong. Well, it's just not a truce. But they're back on. What do you think it means to Tesla?
I think it's really bad for Tesla. You know, we published some data yesterday, a consumer survey of 8,000 people. And, Musk had lost Democrats, some time ago, certainly on the way in. But there was a sense that he might be able to actually bring over some Republicans kind of buying Teslas out of solidarity. And importantly for the EV industry, grow that tent, grow the politics of people who might be interested in an electric vehicle. That has not happened. The data that we published from Electric Vehicle Intelligence Report said that Republicans were 11 percentage points less likely to buy a Tesla than they were just a couple of months ago. So that coalition has not expanded. This is bad for Tesla. I mean, the thing about Tesla is for a while, it sort of had a monopoly on the product. It built these really beautiful, really great category-defining cars. It turns out it's not really rocket science. There are certainly things that Tesla is doing better, and the self-driving stuff is interesting. The robotaxi stuff is interesting. But building a good electric car is something that plenty of car companies have figured out how to do, which means that they're really reliant on the brand. And they kind of always have been to a degree. Elon Musk kind of single-handedly kept Tesla afloat by bringing in investors, by bringing in talent. It was sort of a force of personality at that company. And now he's become, frankly, toxic to people on both sides of the aisle. I think they've got real problems. Their sales you're already seeing it. There have been some executive departures. Elon is kind of trying to run sales to take that over, particularly in Europe, where they've really bottomed out. I think they have real problems.
I wonder, Liz, if this sort of marks the pendulum swinging back. You know, for some time we saw companies get out there taking stands, selling products that cater to a specific group of people in the country. They suffered backlashes, that lasted much longer than anticipated. Target is one. Budweiser is another. We're seeing what's gone on with Tesla in terms of the turn in sentiment on Tesla, because the risk of taking a stand in any direction is that you offend the rest of the people who don't like that stand. And maybe this is, there, I think, could be an argument made that from a shareholder perspective solely, that this is a good thing, that companies are just thinking about what is best for shareholder value at this point, instead of trying to take stands which could risk alienating half of their customer base.
I completely agree. And I think this is a little bit of a function of kind of the late 2010s, where, not to say that being a CEO wasn't that hard, but things were going pretty well. This was a pretty benign macro environment. Earnings were growing. It wasn't the day-to-day job of running a company was just frankly easier. And it kind of created this sort of leisure time among the executive class. And it coincided with these big social movements. Me Too, the murder of George Floyd. And there was this sense that people were looking to them. Their employees and their customers and their shareholders were demanding that they take a stand. And they said, okay, I feel like I have the rope to do that. A couple of things changed. Obviously, the politics just changed incredibly quickly. But so did the job of being a CEO. It frankly just got harder. And they're putting out a lot of fires in their business. And they say, God, I never really wanted to do this in the first place. I got kind of pressured into it. And it sort of sleeves off my vest to just keep my head down. The problem is that is hard to do because these companies are, largely big, complicated, global. This stuff really still matters in large parts of the world to investors. In particular. And so I think most CEOs are just kind of waking up and opening Twitter and saying kind of there, but for the grace of God, go all of us. I do think they are just badly trying to get out of the business of having opinions on stuff.
Okay. Liz Hoffman, Semafor, great to see you. Appreciate it. We should also mention for just a moment that we reached out to Ben & Jerry's for comment on that Semafor story, and they did not get back to us.